Hey everyone, and welcome to the studio. I want to do a painting for you today. It's a busy day here at the studio. We are expecting a pallet of sod to come for our backyard oasis. So we have got a lot of work to do, but I did want to have the chance to paint a little bit. I really feel the need to paint every day no matter what else is going on in my world, in my little world. So I have a really exciting painting for you today. I am going to show you how I repurpose a piece of Canson unsanded paper. So I know many of you paint on Canson or have tried to paint on Canson and get frustrated because it doesn't take as many layers. But it's an inexpensive quality paper. And there are ways that we can repurpose it, so if you do a painting that you don't like, we can fix it. So I'm going to show you how I did that, and then I'm going to do a quick demonstration. So if you would, stick with me till the end, and then that way you can see how I pull the painting from the ashes of a demo gone bad, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you like what you see, and click on that notification bell so you will be notified anytime I post a new video. So that really helps me, so I appreciate that. Alright, let's get down to business. Have a look. Here is my repurposed piece of Canson paper, and I'm going to just pull it off the tape tab gently. Whenever you use tape tabs, you want to be very gentle when you pull it off so you don't tear the paper. But you can see this was a piece of white, unsanded Canson paper. I had done a demo where I was showing color swatches. I was doing a review of a pastel set. So see these blotches of color? That was underneath. That was the, it wasn't really a painting, it was just a demonstration of color swatches. So to repurpose the paper, all I did was take some clear gesso and a really crummy brush, and I just simply liquefied what pastel was on the paper with the brush. Now normally when I do this, I just go with random brush strokes so that I can get really varied, interesting texture. But I wanted to try this time to have a little bit more even application of the clear gesso. And I think you can see in the video that you can see these kind of brush strokes are all going in one direction, kind of more like a, and then I went the other way as well when it was wet, just to give it more of a linen weave. So we'll see how that goes. But guess what? Wetting down this paper with clear gesso did not make this unsanded paper buckle or warp. It dried perfectly flat, and it actually feels a little bit thicker now, so it has a little bit more body to it. So I'm really excited to use it and see what happens. So what am I going to paint? I have for you today a small, very crummy photo. And this happens to be a scene in Iceland, and I visited Iceland twice. It's an amazing place, and I was on a 9-hour bus tour, which was a fantastic experience, and I could only take pictures out of the window most of the time, so the photos that I took were not very good, but I experienced it there with all my senses, so I'm going to pull what is in my head to help interpret the photo. Now I can tell you, and you can't see it in the photo, but these were just fields of lupin or lupine, however you want to pronounce it, those purple blue flowers, and they're all over Iceland in the summer. But this painting is going to be about the sky. So what did I do is I started by lowering the horizon. I did a very quick drawing with a hard pastel. You can see here's where the horizon is. I put a leading line so that I can kind of direct my lupin flowers to pull us into the painting. Here is that little mountain outcropping, and then it's going to be about the sky. So I left more room for the sky. I'm going to be using Terry Ludwig pastels. This set of Terry Ludwigs is called the Floral Landscape set, and I selected these for this particular set, and I love it because it allows me to paint any kind of landscape with flowers or without flowers. So I really love these. If you are on a budget and you can't afford a big set of Terry Ludwig pastels. You can buy them open stocks, you can try them out, and you can use them to supplement less expensive sets. And over on my Patreon page, and here's how you can get to that, I have done a couple of videos now of demonstrating less expensive budget-minded sets, so you can find those videos over there. Alright, now to start the painting. I'm going to start by blocking in all of the dark shapes, and I'm going to start by using a few random hard pastels. Let's find a dark blue, which is a good color to get started with. And I'm going to start with all the dark shapes. And it really, when you look at my photograph, you see that it looks like the whole entire foreground is dark, but we're going to have to add a little bit more light to it, because it wasn't really that dark. Now about this mountain outcropping, it was along the coast. Anytime I do a mountain, I'm going to make it smaller than I think it should be. And the reason why is this, as I add pastel, those mountain shapes are going to grow. Without a doubt, for me anyways, they're going to grow. So if I start them off smaller, that way if they grow, they'll grow into their correct size. So I always start distant land masses smaller than I want them to be. So I've got that dark blue leading up to that mountain shape. Alright, that's the dark. I am going to add some purple down here. It's also a dark value because I know I'm going to be putting in those flowers, suggestion of flowers, as the painting progresses. Now you can see here that the texture of the clear gesso where it dried and make ridges. Now got away from me. Some artists don't like to work on this kind of texture. I actually like it because it's showing the dirt color underneath, so I would leave this alone, but I do want to show you that if you are bothered by the texture, you can take any kind of blending tool and rub it in, right? Oops. I got another one, it's good. I'm not going to rub the whole thing in because I like the feeling of the dirt underneath the flowers, but you can use, and I'm using pipe insulation foam, and you can rub in the first layer to get the pastels down into the groove, and that helps alleviate some of the texture, but I actually like the texture, so I'm not going to do that. I could work a little bit on this landmass, and then I'm going to concentrate on the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in my box, and I want to have this feeling like it's in the distance, so I'm going to use some blues, some grayed down blue pastels, just to give it a feeling of light, dull, cool. Those are all things that we want when we're trying to get something to be pushed back into the distance. So I have a couple of blue grays, gray green, gray violets in my set that I can use to create this feeling of distance. And there's actually a little bit that's even further back, so I would want to make that even lighter. Let's add a little pale blue to that little bit over there. And I feel like there was more land way in the distance, so I'm going to put a little blue line back in there. I may or may not leave that. We'll see how it goes. Now, I'm going to take out another blue just to kind of reinforce where some of those ridges are. I just kind of want to hint at some of the darker shadowed areas of this distant mass. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this little space here because remember, it's not going to be about that, it's going to be about the sky. So I can go on and move right onto the sky now, and I love the sky in the photo. And I remember this day, it was cloudy most of the day, which was a disappointment because we couldn't see the mountains But as the sky started to break open, we started to get glimpses of a beautiful blue sky. So I want to capture this idea of the blue sky starting to open. So I want to first put in some of the darker clouds. So I'm going to start with a dark purple. And this is a gray kind of cloud right in here. So I want to make it feel gray, but I don't want to use gray. I don't want to use the gray that's made from black and white. What I want to do is make my own gray. So I'm putting down some purple. I'm going to pick up some peach that is a similar value, and I'm going to layer it on top of the purple. And then I'm going to pick a light green that is also the same value as the peach and the purple. Layer it. And what is re-layered with the purple. And what is happening is I have turned this, oops, I'm going to just put a little bit of a blue-gray. I've turned this mass into a gray, but a more colorful gray than if I just use black and white. Now I can go ahead and put in the sweeping blue of the sky. So I'll start with a middle dark value blue up at the upper portion of the sky. And then of course as the sky comes closer to the horizon, it's going to get gradually lighter. It's also going to get a little bit warmer. So I will switch to a blue-green as I get closer to the horizon. Now, you can decide at this point if you want to have a very smooth sky and then blend it all in, or if you like this feeling of the texture of the paper, you can exploit that and leave it alone. I do want to show you, if I did want to blend it in, I would simply take my little finger and just very gently dance it across those layers of blue. And I think what I'll do is I'll have the blue kind of blended, but I'll leave the clouds with the texture, and then that way there'll be a nice contrast. So what's happening over here? There's some light on the clouds and some light at the horizon, but I don't want to use white. I do know there's going to be a lot of violet down here on the ground because of the purple flowers, so I'm going to start with a pale value violet. And when I teach over on Patreon, and also when I do in-person workshops and I talk about painting the sky and clouds, I like to make sure that there's some sort of relationship between what's happening in the sky and what's happening on the ground. So I'm adding violet to the clouds to help forge that relationship. I still don't want to make it too pasty looking or white, so I'm going to add a little pale yellow just to give it a little warmth, because the sun was out if the sky is blue, so I'm going to give the sky a little bit of warmth with a middle value yellow. But then I want to brighten it up a little bit more, so I'm using a lighter value yellow. And here's where I'm going to be a little bit more careful. Put that pale yellow at the horizon, and now I need to carve that mountain shape, but I don't want to leave a halo. You know what I'm saying? By halo, I don't want to outline the shapes. And then we'll add a little bit of light to this cloud. Connect them a little bit. Now I feel like I've gotten rid of my grays, so I'm going to just reintroduce some of the gray. Some of the gray got lost with all the light, so I'll just put a little bit more in there. And then the other thing, if you want to have some of these wispies that are kind of coming off the cloud shape, I can just very, very lightly go over the blue sky, just to get those little wispy. The other thing that you can do is take the sky color, the blue, and come in and carve and create some hard edges in your clouds and let some of the edges be soft. So you want to have a variety of edges so that your clouds don't look like they're pasted on, but they instead look like they're integrated into the sky. So I'll put the cloud shapes in, and then I'll come back with sky color to kind of carve in areas. If I want the clouds to be a little bit brighter, I'm going to take another pale value, just kind of carve into there a little bit more. Alright, I might come back to the sky, we'll see. Let's smooth that out. Let's now turn our attention to the ground. Now, one thing that has happened is I lost the definition of my little mountain shape, so I'm going to just come back in and refine that just a little bit. I'm going to pull it out just a little bit further. And I'm going to blend the horizon right in here so that I can make it feel like it's way in the distance. I'm also going to refine this a little bit more with a harder pastel, but I'll come back and do that. So let's go ahead and work a little bit on this ground. I'm going to take the dark blue and reinforce the foreground, darken the foreground. I'm also going to take a dark violet and put that in on the foreground. Remember, I'm going to attempt to not make this foreground too busy, because I want this to be about the sky and not what's happening on the ground. So I have to remind myself of that. Now, there is a lot of green down in here, so I'm going to take a dark green. And I'm trying to remember that I want to really allow the, whoa, here's another dark green. This is more of a yellow green. I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. What am I trying to do? Oh, keep this simple as I possibly can. I just want it to be a simple, foreground that hints at all of these layers of flowers. Now, one thing that I really liked about this photo, and I do remember this, is that there must have been some water back in the distance, and I really liked how it picked up the light. So I'm going to go in and, with a pale blue, put that little sliver of light in the distance. I have to refine it a little bit. I got it a little too fat. There's also a little bit of gold, like some of the dirt showing, so I'm going to put a little bit of that, kind of a darker value. And then now let's start to hint at some of those flowers. And what I'm going to do is I have this box. I call this my blue bonnet colors, but anytime I want to, excuse me, paint blue flowers, these are the box I take out. So if I want to paint or purple flowers, lavender, blue bonnets. If it's a purple flower, I like to take out this box because it's got the right little bits and pieces. And I'm not really showing single flowers right now. I'm just kind of layering some of the masses, putting in the masses, and then right here in the foreground, leading us to the back into the painting, I'm going to just hint at a few of the upright shapes of those flowers. I'm not going to, excuse me, I'm not going to do it everywhere. I'm going to just put in a few just to show us that, oh hey, this whole thing are is flowers all the way as far as your eye can see, and that is actually how I remember it. Some of them are getting some light. Let's see if I've got that. And then what I want to do is I want to refine this area right in here. So I have a harder pastel, a Nupastels brand that I can kind of carve in and get a harder edge on the edge of that mountain. I've got a blue one in here. Sometimes I'll use the harder pastels when I want to make these lines like the distant water line. It allows me to get in and get a little bit more precise. And there seems to be, as I'm looking at the photo, a little bit of haze, you know, at the base of this. So let's just take a pale value and give it a little bit of haze, push all this stuff back. I can also create haze by just blending it softly with my finger. And one thing that I notice before I finish is in making that correction, I made it, the outline not as interesting. Like I made it too straight. So I'm just going to carve in and get a more interesting silhouette of this shape. And then I'm going to stop there because this happens a lot when you're painting and you get focused in on one area and you're like, oh, that's not right, I got to fix that, And really, if you were to just move away and focus on other areas of the painting, you would realize that that area was not as bad as you thought. So it's always good to step back and move away. And that's what I'm going to do for this painting. So, just to recap, what did we do here today? We took a piece of Canson unsanded paper that normally you just throw it in the garbage because it had just a mess on it, and we repurposed it with clear gesso, and we were able to make a painting that is much better than what I had originally. That was Heidi, by the way. So thanks for tuning in. Join me on Patreon if you want more of these videos, and I am glad you're here, and let's paint.